What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. And today we want to discuss Alexis Lafreniere. He's come up in some trade rumors. The Canucks are interested in him, and apparently the Rangers are mulling the idea of potentially shipping him off, whether they're gaining picks, whatever. He's a restricted free agent this offseason coming off of his entry-level contract. So the possibility of the Rangers trading him is out there, and we want to go ahead and discuss it in today's episode. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. But without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your initial thoughts on the idea of potentially trading Alexis Lafreniere?
I'm doing pretty good. We're just deep into the Rangers offseason right now, still patiently awaiting the head coach decision, which at this point seems like it might never happen. Just hire me or Anthony at this point. But, player wise, things are a little confusing. We have a lot of free agents coming up, probably not going to be able to sign Kane or Tarasenko. We still got to sign Keandre Miller, Zach Jones, a bunch of people that we have on the team right here. But the biggest one, whose future is kind of a little up in the air, is Lafreniere. Like, we know we're not going to get Kane or Tarasenko. We know we're going to keep Keandre Miller. But then there's just Lafreniere, where he's been on the team for 3 seasons now. First overall pick a couple of years ago, I think it was 2019. And he hasn't really done much, throughout his career. 216 games played, but he's only put up 91 points. So it's nothing too spectacular for a first overall pick right there. But he has slowly been improving, adjusting to the NHL, where just this past season, he set his career high in points at 39. So it's like a decent score right there, decent points. But I don't know, he's a free agent, and now the time has come where the Rangers got to decide, are we going to keep the guy, or are we going to let him go? So
Yeah, it's a big decision. Of course, if they do end up extending him, signing him this offseason, they're going to have to pay him a pretty significant amount of money considering, he hasn't necessarily had his full breakout. I know that the idea of trading Alexis Lafreniere is one that I floated midway through the season when he was going through a little bit of a slump, and all of the fans and listeners of this podcast decided that they wanted to take all of their hatred and anger out on me for floating that idea. But now here the Rangers are considering the same idea that I had, so I feel a little bit better now. But I will say, I have kind of changed my mind on that. I thought that Lafreniere down the stretch played really well. I thought in the postseason he made some good plays. I think that generally speaking, he's a player that the Rangers should keep. They should re-sign him, extend him, and build around him. I think that he could be the future of the right wing spot for this Rangers team. Of course, we're loaded up on that top 6, but Lafreniere, he can make his way into the top 6 rather soon. I think that, when we were talking about it in the last episode, we were talking about the predicted lines for the upcoming season and who might stay, who might go. We talked about Lafreniere probably being in the top 6, maybe being on the first line, depending on how these lines shape out. And I think that when you look at the state of this Rangers team, all those old guys, those rentals, they're about to be gone. I think you could look at it from the direction of taking this into a rebuilding direction and maybe going with all youth, taking all these young guys and hoping that they pan out. And I think Lafreniere is kind of your poster child for that. Make him that young guy that if you can develop him and he breaks out, he could be the star of this Rangers team. Again, some struggles throughout his career, hasn't lived up to the expectations of that pick, but overall, I think that he's a player who's starting to come into his own and someone that I could see the Rangers building around for the foreseeable future rather than shipping him off for an older player or some draft picks. But Eric, when you're looking at it from that perspective, do you think that Lafreniere could be a cornerstone, a building block for this team still? Or after a couple of underwhelming seasons here with the Rangers, do you think that maybe he just kind of finds himself as being one of those middle of the road, better players on the team, but not the star of the show?
yeah, I mean, obviously he has a lot of potential, and there's a reason why we drafted him first overall. He hasn't shown it yet, but he's a pretty good player who does have the potential to make a huge impact on the team. And the chances of him being able to pull that off and becoming like a cornerstone piece of the New York Rangers offense, it'll come down to where he plays in the coming seasons, where, throughout his entire career, he's been pretty much buried down on the third line with the rest of the kids on that left side. But now that Kane and Tarasenko are probably gone, the Rangers don't have a lot of cap space to sign any big name players. We're probably going to have to fill those spots from players already within the organization. And we know that Capo Caco is probably going to slide up on the right wing to take either that first line or that second line spot right there. Heedle is a center. He's pretty much trapped down there on the third line unless Trocheck gets demoted too. So then that kind of just leaves Lafreniere where, he's not really going to overtake Chris Kreider or Artemi Panarin's spot on the top two left wing spots. So if he's able to translate over onto the right side and play well over there, yes, Alexis Lafreniere should move up into the top six, get more playing minutes, have more opportunities to make an impact on the team. But if not, he's going to be trapped down there on the third line for pretty much the rest of his tenure with the Rangers. And I know that's not something that the Rangers want, not something that he wants, and certainly not something that we would want to see either. He has that potential and he needs to be given that chance to break out. So in order for that to happen, he's really going to need to practice playing on the right side of the ice right there so he can move up.
Yeah, and right wing is the big hole for the New York Rangers, of course, with Patrick Kane about to depart. And when you look at it from that perspective, Tarasenko as well, and Tyler Mott could potentially not be back either. When you look at it from that perspective, if he's able to transition to the other side, I think that's Lafreniere's way into the top six, maybe onto the first line. And that's probably how he establishes himself as a star. I think he's going to need to make that transition. The Rangers a little bit loaded up on the left side, barring any spectacular trade where they ship off the bread man. But when you look at it with Lafreniere in mind, if he's able to move over to that right side, I think he can create an avenue for himself to break out and become a superstar. And when you read about the situation here with the Rangers and what they're considering doing with Lafreniere, it sounds like they might be interested in moving him over to the right side. If they don't feel confident that he can make the transition, though, they might want to ship him off. I don't know what exactly they would do with whatever assets they got back. Maybe they would find themselves a true right winger, but a Lafreniere trade could be quite lucrative for the Rangers. Eric, when you think about this trade and some recent trades that you might have seen where young stars or up-and-coming stars have been traded, what do you think the Rangers could even get for Lafreniere? And do you think that they'd be targeting draft picks, like let's reboot, let's go into rebuild mode, get a bunch of picks, find some valuable prospects? Or do you think that maybe they try to find another veteran since they are still in the Stanley Cup Finals window? Do you think that they should load up on some established talent here, maybe trade away some of these young developing guys, get that established talent, and make another run for the Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think going for the cup is obviously the number one thing that we got to do here. Yeah, obviously this year was a little disappointing in the postseason, just 7 games straight out in the first round. But you look back at the year beforehand, we made a deep run. We still have the potential to make long, deep runs in the future. So I would prefer if Lafreniere were to be traded, don't go for draft picks. We need someone who's going to help us win. And then you look at the teams that are interested in Lafreniere. You got like the Coyotes, Flames, Canadians, Flyers, Canucks, all teams that aren't that good right now, but they have some good players. So those teams are going to be interested in a guy like Lafreniere who hasn't broken out just yet, but has the potential to, so they can make basically like what you said earlier, just form a rebuild around him. The Rangers don't really need to rebuild. We need someone who's going to immediately make an impact. So if the Rangers were to trade him, probably I would say hopefully to the Canucks. I think they're the best team out of those 5 that I just mentioned. We can probably get a good, cheap player that can fill in one of those right side roles there on the Rangers pretty well. So I would be a little upset to lose a guy like Lafreniere, who I know can make a huge impact on the team. But given the current needs of the Rangers, that would probably be the only way that they would trade him. And I would be like, all right, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so for me personally, my bottom line take on it, why the Rangers should not trade Alexis Lafreniere, they don't have much money. Trading Alexis Lafreniere doesn't fix that for them. It doesn't free up a bunch of cap space. They still have some massive contracts being handed out to Trocheck, Panarin, Zibanejad, other guys, Kreider as well. They don't have much money, and when you look at that right wing spot, they need to improve there. But how do they improve without the money? I think you try Alexis Lafreniere on the right side and hope that that propels them to have a breakout. So I think that's the only way that the Rangers can fix these lines, fix this roster ahead of the 2023-24 season. They need to address that hole. It's a massive hole. Tarasenko likely not coming back. Patrick Kane almost definitely not coming back. They need to find a right winger over there. And I think Alexis Lafreniere is going to have to step up to the plate and be that guy. Now, we know that they do have some prospects. We're all really excited about Brennan Othman. He has the ability to play on either side. I think he even has played a little bit of center. He's a really versatile player, but he's not going to be starting out in the top six by any means. He's going to be starting out in the fourth line, maybe the third line, trying to work his way up. Again, really excited about Brennan Othman, but I'm not expecting him to be the second coming of Patrick Kane the second that he steps onto the NHL ice. So with Alexis Lafreniere, I think that's the opportunity for him to stay with this team and make an impact, move over to the right side, fill that hole that the Rangers desperately need to fill. And I think that at right wing, again, the lack of money, the lack of cap space for the Rangers this offseason, it's just going to make it so difficult for them to properly address that position. So I think that they just need to bank on Lafreniere to make that transition over to that spot and work out. And if it doesn't work out, then okay, maybe 2 years from now, we're talking about the Rangers rebuild. But right now, I think that while we're in this cup window, try Lafreniere over on that right side, hope that it pans out, and hope that he turns into a star over at the right wing spot. But Eric, before we wrap, any final closing thoughts on why the Rangers shouldn't trade Alexis Lafreniere?
Yeah, it just comes down to his contract really as well, where you look at, I would compare it to Jack Hughes, who was drafted first overall the year before Lafreniere. He was the type of player who came into the league, had like 2 or 3 seasons, didn't really break out that much, but the New Jersey Devils saw that potential that Jack Hughes would bring and just signed him to like a massive 8-year contract, but the cost wasn't that much because he hadn't broken out yet. So now, like a year later, when he's pretty much putting up like 100-point seasons, and the Devils just have this amazing contract where they have him for the next 7 years for extremely cheap. And that's something that the Rangers could also look into, where if we want to sign a massive extension for Lafreniere, it's really just kind of going all in, though. If it fails and he doesn't break out like Jack Hughes did, then we're stuck with Lafreniere putting up 40-point seasons for the next 8 years. So that's one option right there. The other option is just let him go, trade him away. But I think the best option for the Rangers to do right now is just consider the fact that Lafreniere is only 21 years old, or 22. I can't remember at this point. There's so many kids on the team. Yeah. And he still has a little bit of time to finish developing before we really decide whether it's worth keeping or letting him go. So I think like a good 2-year bridge deal, maybe like 2 years by like $3 million. It's a nice, short, cheap contract. Really, just it's basically what we did for Philip Hedl and Capo Caco. We're just give him 2 years to show us what he has before we really just need to make a final decision on it. So that would be my choice if I was Chris Drury. Sign him, don't trade him, and then in 2 years we'll deal with it.
Yeah, I like the idea of a bridge deal. I think that makes sense. And again, that kind of gives the Rangers the opportunity to be flexible with his position. Try him over at the right side for these next 2 years. If it works, then yes, let's sign him to that long-term extension 2 years from now. But if he struggles over these next 2 years, it's not too long-term of a commitment. You could kind of move on without a huge financial penalty. So I think that we're in the same boat on that one, Eric. But again, my final closing thoughts, right wing, that's something that we're going to have to discuss in the next episode because it is a huge need for the New York Rangers outside of a head coach, which they still haven't hired. But right wing, probably the biggest need on the Rangers lines right now. Again, I think Alexis Lafreniere can fill that void. However, we will go ahead in the next episode and discuss some other options for the New York Rangers at that right wing spot. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. Without further ado, we will catch you on the next one. Have a good one and let's go Rangers.